Okay. Think good now? I hope so. At least. Forgot to add pretzel rocks as a mod. How am I sounding? I hope I'm sounding okay. Tweet is out. I think we're good to I think we're good. I hate how Twitter shows like the little title card for your link, and it shows a game that I played like 3 days ago, so whatever. Lame. So they do need to have a talk. Like, I think it's like the way to fix that is that you have to go into your cache and cookies and be like, okay, clear that out. Now you'll show the correct game because it's new information. Whatever. Discuss it. Yeah, I don't know. It's Twitter. Twitter's the one who who recently just snuck into their codes, not code, but like their terms of service that they can basically repurpose your art and stuff to other people who sell things, advertisements and all that. And it's totally okay because you agreed to the terms of service, but your work is still your own. So it's like, what do you really want from us, Twitter? Are you just Instagram? Are you just gonna steal our stuff? Like, what is it? But now that we have a few people, yeah, no, that's I've seen a couple screenshots. Legitimately, they said that. But I guess we should probably begin. There's a few people here. Hopefully, we'll get a few more. About 10 minutes in, we can do like an introduction at least. Or the stream has been going for 10 minutes, but yeah. But yeah. I'm gonna abuse having Wii Games Twitter account access and retweet my tweet because I'm that person and I deserve it. Of course I wanted to wear the Wonder Woman. Like, listen, I had to. It makes sense. Why wouldn't I wear it? So, also, official hellos to Bombi and Mars. Thank you for joining. I think we're good to start. People can hop in. I can answer questions after. But I wanted to explain what this is. Too long didn't read TLDR. It's basically just me. It's just like an hour, hopefully an hour long. It might be shorter, of me just talking about Wonder Woman. You could think of it like having a Skype call with someone, but you're not talking to me. I'm just talking to you. So, hello everyone. I'm Amelia, Queen Llama, and welcome to the Themysciran Agenda. Gotta work on that. It's a monthly talk show about all things Wonder Woman. A lot of what I'll be talking about will be stuff that people on Twitter or friends ask me to go over. I read. We are here for the talk. That's good. I read a lot of Wonder Woman comics, and I've read a lot of Wonder Woman comics. And not only that, I've gone beyond that and started to read history books and how the stories came to be, all that. You can kind of see in the background my room. I have statues. I have short boxes of comics. But yeah, I love this character. It's been about 4 years running of me just consistently collecting anything Wonder Woman. It's kind of slowed down a little bit because of video games and stuff, but kind of returning back to that. So I guess let me just kind of explain the episode format. I'm totally open to suggestions. If you listen for a little bit and you'd like to see something that I didn't go over, or maybe a way you want to do it, I'm totally down to hear that. If you'd rather this be recorded, that's fine too. I just don't want to do all the video editing, so this is easier for me. For this episode particularly, we'll be going over who is Wonder Woman, her origin, key characters, the political and social environment with which she was created in. And a lot of that is stuff you don't find in the comics. It's stuff you find from the different books that are out there about her character, and you realize there's like this kind of very rich history to the character that I think a lot of these heroes have. You know, I could do the same for Batman if I really had the time, and I don't. But that's pretty much what will be going on. I have it set up, and actually after this I'll read over my script again, and I'll release the script for you guys to see. I want to make sure that, you know, people who can't listen to the Themysciran Agenda can at least access the, you know, the content, and maybe it'll help them start reading Wonder Woman, or maybe they'll find something interesting that they didn't know. But I want to make sure that's accessible to everyone. So, before I begin, does the chat have any questions? It's so exciting, just me talking, I know. It's weird. This is the most I've ever talked to myself. It's weird. Okay, let's do this. Let's jump right in. And again, feel free to ask questions. Distract me if you want. Like I said, this is something I'm gonna have to learn and teach myself with, because I'm not used to it. So anyway. Who is Wonder Woman? That's the real question here. So, you know, Wonder Woman is a lot of things, and I'll be the first to say that there's no right way to see the character, even though, like, I'm also the first one to say, like, you're wrong about your opinions on Wonder Woman, and here's why. Everyone does talk about Batman, that's true. And Batman has twice as much content, and I could not tackle that even if I wanted to. So hats off to anyone who's able to even remotely dive into that sphere of things. So yeah, Wonder Woman. Who would win? Torbjorn? Okay. Wonder Woman would wipe the floor with Torbjorn and tell Scotty that Macaroni Torbjorn is the worst looking Torbjorn skin ever, and that Torbjorn is not a fun hero to play. Yeah, tell Scotty that. I said that directly. But, back to who is Wonder Woman. You know, I get annoyed when people are like, well, this is how Wonder Woman should be, this is how she, you know. And it's like, well, you look at certain comics and, like, she is this and she is that, but she's a lot of things, and I think that's what makes her so great. To put it briefly and to kind of hit at, like, the original intention of the character, Wonder Woman is the antithesis to the male superhero. She's an embodiment of feminism, an amalgamation of womanhood, and the very idea of what a female superhero should be. What ultimately sets her apart is her capacity for love. something that at the time the creator of Wonder Woman, William Moulton Marston, felt was lacking in the superhero scene. She's also propaganda. You know, she's feminine propaganda, but she was also war propaganda. That is something that you can't separate from the character. So you take different things from her, and you take different things about being a woman. You take different things about being a queer woman or a queer person, and you kind of stuff it in, and you get Wonder Woman, and you add a little sexuality and kinkiness in there, and that's Wonder Woman. But ultimately, Wonder Woman is who you interpret from the comics. That's just kind of the general summary. Her first comic, their first appearance was All-Star Comics number 8. It's called Introducing Wonder Woman. It went over her origins, introduced some of the main characters, and basically explained why she's a superhero, why she's fighting for justice. Trick question, she was fighting because we were fighting Nazis at the time, and it's all propaganda. That's something you gotta remember, because a lot of these early, especially if you dive into the early comics, a lot of it is very racist, very propaganda, and you have to like appreciate it for what it is and what it did, but also realize like they're very much intended to be products of their time, but because they were so popular, they end up transforming over time, which is the sign of a good character is one that stands beyond its original origin. So after that, so that was December 1941. In January 1942 was Sensation Comics. That was kind of her first serial series. Again, it kind of rehashed her introduction and then had a few more issues. And the cool thing about some of her early stories in Sensation Comics was that it was very social and progressive. One issue, she was fighting for equal pay for women, and this is in 1942. On the other hand, you get very bad caricatures and racist caricatures of Japanese people. They were kind of there's a big focus on the way we portray black people, Japanese people. Nazis are Nazis, of course, but it was very much you can really tell that, that's like something, if you saw it today, you'd be like, oh, are you kidding me? This is awful. So yeah, that's the gist of who Wonder Woman is. So now I'll move into who her creators are, who are these important people that you need to know. There's a lot of history behind these people. They're like famous people for the time, which is kind of crazy. You don't really hear about the associate editor of Wonder Woman, who also happened to be a spy for the Allies. Like, it's that kind of crazy. They talk about the world being small, but I feel like the world was smaller back then. Because so-and-so, who was also the top world tennis player, was also a spy, and it's pretty fun. It's pretty interesting and pretty crazy, and that's something you don't normally hear about with a character, because you're focusing on the character. But before I jump into that, anyone have any questions or comments? I'm kind of talking really fast because I'm nervous. I'm talking too fast. Please tell me to slow down, and I will try. But yeah, we gotta do something about these awkward silences. We'll figure it out. It's a learning process, right? I appreciate the vote of confidence. So let's keep moving. I'm just checking Twitter just to make sure no one has said anything to me. So I've recently dived into... Hey, Gentrix. Wow. Kristen Wiig playing Cheetah. I feel like I'll have to do an episode on the movie and the stuff, but I'm actually pretty excited. I love Cheetah. Cheetah needs her own episode, first of all, because there's so much to Cheetah that I didn't appreciate at first until it was written in a certain way. So I feel like she's a good character to go over. And I feel like if they use the cheetah from the recent issues in Rebirth, it'll be a better overall rendition of Cheetah on screen. Because there's a lot of love behind the way they did Cheetah there. But overall, I'm interested. It's not who I'd pick, but also I don't even know who I'd pick anyway, so unconventional. Let's see where it goes. I think it'll be good. So, the important people you need to know about Wonder Woman. It is like reading my tweets with more content. It is. That's kind of, I was like tired of just doing 280 character tweets. Not everyone's a history nut like me, and not everyone's like a Wonder Woman nut like me, so you don't need to know all about William Moulton Marston's life. You know, he did this, he did this. I just think it's super interesting. He wrote under the pen name Charles Marston. That was, at the time they didn't want to have him fully associated. Anyway, people pick pen names all the time. He is the creator of Wonder Woman. His family, owns the rights to the character, stuff like that. He is actually more than just a comic book writer. He is a psychologist and an inventor. Grew up during the suffrage movement and was very much inspired by the suffrage movement. And you can see that in the early works of Wonder Woman. He created the prototype to the lie detector that is actually something he did. And in his early year in college with his wife, they created a blood test. I don't know if they still use this blood test, but it was one of the first blood tests that was kind of important to medicine. So he was very much one of those people that you don't hear about in science that contributed a little bit here and there. So he did research on feminine pleasure and kinks and all of that. That also shows up in the early comics. A lot of bondage plays a part in Wonder Woman and her character and the cast of characters and what they go through. It's very interesting. He was in a polyamorous relationship. He had a mistress and a wife, and his wife and his mistress ended up living the rest of their lives together in the same house after he died. So it was very much, you can't say whether or not it was healthy, but as far as poly relationships go, this one was pretty legit. It wasn't exploitative or it didn't exploit someone over another. It was very much they all loved each other. His original idea, he wanted Wonder Woman to be the amalgamation of every woman and embody the ideals of feminine supremacy. He believed women were meant to take over the world and should rule. He was very good guy, feminist guy. But yeah, feminism was kind of just at the time of when he started to write Wonder Woman was becoming more prevalent. He was very much supportive of it. And a lot of the early villains in Wonder Woman were inspired by men he came into contact with that were very much against the suffrage movement and against the feminist movement. So yeah, he, when you start looking into his history more, I wouldn't say he's perfect. No one's perfect, but I think as far as if I had to pick a guy to create Wonder Woman, if she had never existed previously, this would be the guy. Yeah, no, he's pretty cool. Wait till you meet his wives. The next person, or the next two people that you need to know are Sadie Elizabeth Holloway and Olive Byrne. They don't get a lot of credit, even though they are the direct inspirations for Wonder Woman. And I feel like people just never talk about them, which pisses me off because, yes, you have the artists and Marston who created Wonder Woman, but these were the inspirations for it, and they legitimately played a role. Olive Byrne was Marston's typist. She helped write his scripts, his comic scripts that he ended up submitting to be published. So direct impact, very much involved in his research as well. Sadie Elizabeth Holloway, his official wife, she was an attorney and a psychologist. She attended an all-girls college, and that very much informed her feminism, and her thinking. She very much wanted to be the breadwinner. She wrote like pieces in newspapers about women empowerment and women's role in the home. And she was very much of the belief that she should be on the same footing as every man that is out there. Really a go-getter. And she even wrote to DC editorial saying that Wonder Woman would never sit, like, she's the reason why we have suffering Sappho as Wonder Woman's like kind of catchphrase, so to speak. Because she wrote DC editorial be like, you guys are idiots. This is what she would say. On another note, it's never confirmed, but I mean, she did live the rest of her life with Olive Byrne. They were best friends. That's what the family officially says. It's not our place to necessarily like, assume were they gay, were they not. But she was a lover of Greek poetry and particularly Sappho's poetry. So the movie about the Marstons is a bit controversial. That's kind of the next thing on my list to watch. I just haven't gotten around to it, honestly. But it's not supported by the Marston family. They didn't like it. They don't support Secret History of Wonder Woman, which is the big book that goes over the Marston's life, the Marston family's lives. So it's like a dramatic retelling of their lives. It's not like it's more of like a drama than it is a biopic, if I could base off what I've been reading. So if you're very much of the mind that if the family says this isn't true, that you follow it, I would probably stay away from it. But I'm very much curious, and I like who was involved in it, so I will be watching it, and maybe I'll do like a combination Wonder Woman movie, Marston movie. I don't know yet. So, moving on to Olive Byrne. She's credited as the main inspiration behind Wonder Woman, including looks and personality. She is the daughter of Ethel Sanger, and she is Margaret Sanger's niece. Both of these women are extremely important because they were responsible for starting the birth control movement. Very much involved in the suffrage movement. So you can see why her and Marston really clicked. She kind of introduced him to a lot of like the college sorority feminist movements that were happening on campus, and also to the circle of suffragists who were involved in the movement. So that's how they kind of all got connected. She started out as Marston's research assistant at Tufts, and then eventually became his research partner. Later on, once they had officially kind of started this poly relationship, she took care of the kids. She continued this for a very long time. The secret nature of their relationship was never told to the children. It wasn't until much later that they kind of got like the whole story. So she's pretty cool because she has a direct relation to the suffrage movement. I mean, she's like, it was like her mom and her aunt were doing these amazing things. So the next person is, of course, the artist, Henry George Peter, H.G. Peter. He's the one responsible for designing Wonder Woman's first iconic look. They took pinup photos, they took different art references to kind of create her first look. He was very much inspired by feminist cartoonist Lou Rogers. She Peter and her worked on the same paper together, and he contributed regularly to a pro-suffrage feature called The Modern Woman. That's kind of where he met Lou, and he very much was chosen because of his connection with the suffrage movement. So there's a few more people we'll discuss, but it's just kind of crazy how it was almost like a perfect storm of all these people to come together. Like, it would be like if you took today, like, Serena Williams, Beyonce, you know, Michelle Obama, and, you know, all these, like, awesome, like, feminist people, and ask them to create a superhero, you know. It was kind of like that. I wouldn't compare. You know, if those people made Wonder Woman today, she'd probably be 10 times even more amazing. But it was really, given the time period and the people involved, it was really the perfect storm for her to be created. I don't think in any other circumstances at the time would this have happened, if there wasn't a war going on, if there wasn't, you know, if we hadn't had gotten out of war, if there wasn't these movements going on, you know, she would have not made it to paper, because everyone was like, nah, we don't want to publish this. For the longest time, you know, there had been female comic characters beforehand. You had Miss Fury and a lot of others, and that were pretty popular, but they weren't superheroes. And so Marston wanted to go in and be like, this is a female superhero. Next person, of course, is Max Gaines. He's the co-publisher of All American Publications and the pioneer of the American comic book industry. He's responsible for publishing Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, and Hawkman. So he created, like, the idea of, like, serialized comics and, like, the comic strip format, which very much created the modern comic book industry we have today. So he's kind of important to know for just other reasons other than publishing Wonder Woman. And now to my favorite person in this whole kind of gang of Wonder Woman is Alice Marble. Alice Marble. She is credited as the associate editor of Wonder Woman and the author of Wonder Woman of History. Those were back issues chronicling different women in history. She did, like, Florence Nightingale and Lucretia Mott, you know, famous women like that who were kind of pioneers for women's rights and all of that. And she wrote scripts for that in the back issues. So she didn't exactly edit the book, but she's credited as, like, an associate editor. She was at the time the best female tennis player in the world. During World War II, she was a spy for the Allied forces and tasked to retrieve Nazi financial data from a Swiss banker. You can't make that up. Like, that is, like, totally Netflix's next news show right there. Like, it's almost too good, like, too preposterous to be true. And get this, the Swiss banker was her ex-lover. So it's like one of those things, like, well, you know, you dated this guy once, could you retrieve this data for us? And she's like, yeah, sure. On that mission, she was shot in the back. She survived and didn't really have much of a spy career after that, but she went back into the journalist field and decided to dedicate the rest of her life to desegregating the sport of tennis for both men and women. So, like, Alice Marble didn't stop. She, like, between being a spy, editor on Wonder Woman, and then, like, an activist for desegregating tennis. I just think that's, like, so cool and something you don't even really focus on. And it's like, oh my god, this person has, like, this huge Wikipedia, you know, you look at this person quickly on Wikipedia and you're like, oh my god, what was this person doing? So these are all the kind of main people that were responsible for making Wonder Woman what she is, for really getting her started. You know, she Go, yeah, no, she literally created the phrase "go hard or go home." I was like, "What have you done today?" Alice is like, "Well, I stole financial data from the Nazis. It was not a big deal. Where's her comic? Like, I want to write about her." But, yeah. So, it was really the perfect storm of people. They're not perfect. Wonder Woman was not perfect on her inception, but a lot of her early works were very socially conscious of the situation of like of these movements going on in the 40s and even before then, and I think because that was the environment in which she was created in, it really carried her forward. It kind of got lax during the Silver Age, and then kind of came back later on. So she's gone through it's been ups and downs of like being very conscious of her feminist origins to being absolute like why. But there's something to take from every era of comics, both positive and negative, I believe. So, now that we've discussed her cast of characters, we can discuss her origin, so to speak, or like her story, who she is, her powers, all of that. And again, if I'm going too fast, please let me know. And if you have if you want me to explain something, I can go into detail as much as I can and elaborate on things. And some of these things that I touch on will definitely be worth it for like its own episode, however long. Just because you can only cover so much in her origin. But yeah. I'm just gonna retweet something again to remind people that I'm talking to myself. And I was an idiot and forgot water. I'm just like, my mouth is so dry right now because I won't I'm just talking constantly. Just talking up my ass like I know all this stuff, and I kind of do, but good now. I could go get water, actually. I could put a pause on the stream quick. But I'm okay. I want to do the blitz and get through this and see how long it would realistically take for these kinds of episodes. So I'm good. It's not any different than playing Overwatch and screaming and stuff. I'll probably be playing Overwatch after this anyways. But yeah. Okay, let's keep going. Her mini origin. Part of the reason why a lot of people don't want to try Wonder Woman or read her comics is because it's too confusing. She has so many origins. It doesn't make any sense. And the fact is, you're kind of right. But also, I feel like you can apply that to every superhero that has existed for 75 years plus, or even 50 years plus. Look at Green Lantern. Which Green Lantern do you want to read about? Where do I start with Green Lantern? And a big problem is there hasn't been a lot of stories that are these kind of one-shots like Batman Year One or Green Lantern. I can't remember the title of the Green Lantern book by Jeff Johns. Like stuff like that sort of remake the character for the modern age. Those stories for Wonder Woman are out there, but they're not necessarily advertised as high profile as a lot of these other ones are. I don't include Wonder Woman Earth One because that's maybe a video for another time. And Grant Morrison and I need to fist fight in a Denny's parking lot first before I do that episode. So to kind of shrink all this down and shrink down the information for y'all, you can describe Wonder Woman's origins in 3 parts. Who are the Amazons? How was she born? And why does she leave Themyscira? If you kind of know the basics of that, you kind of understand the character, and you can kind of, from there, understand most things. It gets a little confusing when you start to get into the 80s and 90s stuff, because that is probably the longest period of time before a reboot for Wonder Woman. But anyway, the Amazons, they are based off the Amazons of the Greek mythology fame, who are also based off the Scythian and Asiatic steppe nomadic tribes. But that is more the history nut in me letting you know all this information that you don't actually need. The Amazons are warriors of the pantheon, the Greek gods. They are granted solitude on Themyscira after either years of battle or years of enslavement, sometimes both. Yes, enslavement does play a very big role in the Amazons' history. It's a touchy subject because it's usually depicted as white women enslaved, and there's just a whole baggage associated with that. And I think if we ever talk about race and all that for Wonder Woman, with regards to Wonder Woman, I definitely have to get a few guests on the show. In the 80s, George Perez did a huge reboot of Wonder Woman, and they were created from the souls of abused women, and they basically came up from the ocean, kind of like what Patty Jenkins did in the Wonder Woman movie, with having them come from the sea. It's very similar to that, where like the Amazons, after the gods, like, may the souls of the women find peace, they become the Amazons. Like, wouldn't that be great to be reborn as an Amazon? But yeah, so that's kind of who they are. Whether they were formed by the gods or just warriors that have existed and battled, almost always they were at one point enslaved by Hercules, depending on which comic you read. Hercules steals Hippolyta's golden girdle. Sometimes you'll see her called as Hippolyte. Again, that varies. Hercules steals the girdle, just like in the actual mythology, the Greek mythology, and he enslaves the Amazons. And this enslavement leaves a profound effect on Amazonian philosophy and ways of life with regards to man's world. The bracelets also originate from this, and they serve as a memento. I'm ready to go to the gay island, yeah. They serve as a memento to the history and time they spent. Yes, the golden girdle, hashtag golden girdle, originate as the memento to that history. Originally, Marston had called these bracelets the bracelets of submission, and that was a whole kink thing. That's a whole other discussion. But after all their battles, or after their enslavement, the gods are like, you guys did well. We're going to grant you solace on Themyscira based off of lesbian, go on to Lesbian Island and live your life in peace. And they leave the world and just live on paradise for a very long time, or for not, it varies. The worst version of the Amazons are the versions that make them out to be man-haters and killers. Almost always they don't hate mankind. They're just very mistrustful due to experience. And they generally just want to stay on Themyscira and not interact with the world. And even then, they make Themyscira exist in like a separate plane of existence. And that's like a whole other thing, because there's like a whole multiverse of universes, and Themyscira exists on one of those planes, and then like the new gods exist on another. It's a mess. There's just some parts that are just messy. So they live on Themyscira, they have a good time. There is a small subsection of Amazons that do not join them in Themyscira and live their life out in the world, and they become very prominent. That's where you meet Artemis for the first time. She is I need to figure out how to say it. It's like Bana McDowell Amazon, and they're like a subsection of Amazon. So I like to think there's all these different tribes of Amazons that didn't like necessarily follow Hippolyta to paradise for various reasons, and I think that's always pretty cool. So those are the Amazons. They're really cool. They're buff. They're hot. They're gay. They're great. They don't always get depicted as that way, but Hippolyta, you know, she's been in love with her General Philippus for like ages. They haven't gotten married yet. They will one day. Here's hoping. You know, Hippolyta Philippus marriage 2018 would really be the icing on top to 2018. But yeah, so those are the Amazons. Moving on, the birth of Diana becomes a heavy focus for a lot of fans and a lot of people. I feel like people make a big deal out of it when in fact most of her story is outside of her birth and you know, her living her life as a grown woman, you know. So I always am just like, why are you so, you know, yes, I prefer this version of her birth over this other, but you know what, just move on. Like, let's just, unless you're Gail Simone and you devote an entire story arc to the idea of her birth and stuff. But I think writers get too bogged down with, you know, the origin and be like, well, you know, because she was born this way, you know, this, and this. But anyway, there's a lot of variations of her birth, but you can basically boil it down to two categories: the clay origin and the Zeus origin, or the god origin. Some derivatives of this are the Hades origin in the Bruce Timm cartoons. I like that one. That one was a good one. Recently, the Zeus origin has taken more prominence because it was the origin used in the movie. And, you know, that's fine. I would have liked to see the clay origin more, but that's okay. You know, it's never about her birth, because she, by the time she goes to man's world, she is grown, and we don't need to focus on that. The clay origin is Hippolyta forms a clay doll, which the gods bless with powers or brings to life. That's the original version that Marston had envisioned. And people have kind of changed it here and there. Gail Simone made her, you know, there was this whole arc where she was like, am I actually alive? Or am I just like a clay golem? And that was like, you know, messing with her head. It really had an effect on her. It's a good arc. It's called The Circle. The Zeus origin, pretty standard to most Greek stories. Diana is a demigod. Hippolyta goes to Zeus demanding a child, or not demanding, but asking for a child. This has a lot of baggage because, you know, Hippolyta is on an island with all women and she still has to go to a man to get a baby. But it's like, whatever. Diana's a demigod. Sometimes she has powers, sometimes she don't. Doesn't matter. Either way, Zeus is still awful. Zeus is always awful. Awful, awful, awful. He will never be anything but the worst. Regardless of if he's Diana's dad or not, he is still the worst. I could dedicate a whole like episode to why the Pantheon sucks, but especially Zeus sucks. And that's probably why a lot of people don't like the Zeus origin anyway, because Zeus is the worst. Like, the dude just like goes around trying to fuck people as swans. Like come on, like this. Hashtag we hate Zeus. Yes. You know, this has been the hashtag since freaking ancient Greece time. So, you know, whatever. Anyway, that's regardless of which story you prefer. I think it's best to just move on and focus on her mission and what she does after her birth and what defines her. You know, people try the birth to the Amazons and how the Amazons would be affected. Man, it's paradise. Diana would be living it up, having a good time, learning all the correct things, and being, like, just an awesome person and raised by awesome people. And I think that's not that hard to grasp as far as origin. And I think the most important part of her origin is her mission. There isn't very many variances from these. She leaves Themyscira to protect mankind and to love mankind. You know, I don't put Steve crashing on, you know, her mission is kind of a direct result of Steve crashing on Themyscira. Yes, I don't really, you know, it is important, but I don't see it as like one of the three main things to understand her origin with. You can pretty much take Steve out of the picture and she would still leave man's world to stop Ares or to like be an emissary of peace. So she either follows Steve to man's world to learn about it, to stop, usually to stop Ares or Mars. And she also appears to the world as an emissary of peace. Sometimes Steve's crash is a catalyst, sometimes it isn't. It depends. Either way, she's gonna show up in our world and she's gonna be like, yo, what's up? I'm Wonder Woman. I'm here to save the day. And love on y'all because you don't love yourselves. So that's kind of... it's a little bit messianic, but not, you know, you don't have to see it that way. It's like how you can see Jesus imageries in freaking Superman, you know, kind of thing. So those are kind of the three main points to her mission. Pretty easy to remember. Once you understand those three things, you can pretty much pick up any origin story and just kind of understand it. There are ones that are better than the others, but I feel like that's a discussion for another episode. Maybe the next episode I'll kind of go over like where to start, what you need to read, what each kind of book is about, but you can't really tell people where to start because they're gonna be like, well, this book you recommended me, that's like the best book ever, was actually really shitty. Happens. But discussing your powers, there's a lot of like, at this point there's just a laundry list of powers, and some aren't even used anymore, but she has them and it's confusing. So we'll just talk about like the first iteration and then the post-crisis iteration, which was after 1985. I feel like if you kind of half that line in the middle, you kind of get a good idea of her power set. From 1942 to 1985 is Golden Age, Silver Age. No real continuity. It was like, think of it like the Big Bang and all the universes are trying to form. That's kind of the time before Infinite Crisis, or Crisis on Infinite Earths, when DC was like, oh, let's get our shit together. Even though Crisis on Infinite Earths isn't that amazing of a book, but it did kind of just, it was like the Big Bang for the DC universe. The first iteration of Wonder Woman was not much different than Captain Marvel Shazam. She had the strength of Hercules, the beauty of Aphrodite, the speed of Mercury, and the wisdom of Athena. And those were like what gave her the powers that she had in the comics. Which is much like Shazam, whose name is like an acronym for like all the people that... so you can think of Shazam as like Wonder Woman's cousin. You know, they share that Zeus... Hey Josie, welcome. I'm talking about Wonder Woman. All about Wonder Woman. Thanks for joining. So that was the Golden Age. She didn't have the ability to fly. Wonder Woman didn't. She could jump great distances, but you know what? Neither did Superman in the very beginning before he was Superman. But anyway, Wonder Woman could jump great distances. Had super strength, super speed, super typing, and the ability to communicate telepathically with her mother via radio waves. Yes, Wonder Woman had telepathic abilities. I kid you not. They had like a telepathic radio phone. Like it was just like something completely made up. And Wonder Woman would dial in like Skype. Like, mother, I'm trying to reach you. And her mom's like, hey, what's up? That happened often. She would phone Themyscira all the time. And I guess telepathic radios, you know, you get free international calls or something. That was obviously something they could do. But yeah, she had that telepath that pretty much after the Golden Age comics, that never really appeared ever again. It was like not used. They're like, why would she have telepathic sort of thing? But those are kind of her pre oh, and Mythil MZ61, I am sorry for saying your name wrong, but welcome to the Themysciran Agenda. And same with Josie, thank you for joining. Appreciate the company. Oh man, it popped off. Thank you both for joining. We're just discussing Wonder Woman's powers and her crazy set of powers. And, you know, if you missed the first half of the talk show, I will be releasing kind of a transcript of everything that I discussed. All important information if you're interested. Or you can watch the video afterwards. But anyway, back to like some of the important craziness. Silver Age, she gained the ability to fly on wind currents. So she was kind of like a flying squirrel. She didn't have the ability to fly. Yes, I gotta throw shade at Crisis because it's confusing. Like, all big events are confusing. Like, you look at some of these big ones and you're just like... What just happened? There we go. Sorry, it read... Okay. So I still gotta figure out those settings. It's so sensitive. Basically, sorry about that. It saw the period and saw it as a link, so it was like, please don't post links. There we go. Please show me your foot for... Nope, no feet. But you can listen to me talk about Wonder Woman. Where were we? Okay, so Silver Age, she was a flying squirrel. She had all the other powers, of course. Post-Crisis on Infinite Earths, her powers were basically overhauled. She basically became what we know today, with a lot of, like, over the years things that have just been dropped. She basically is just inconsistent. She gained the ability to fly with, on the level of Superman. She had super strength, super smell, and combat abilities honed on Themyscira. Thank you for the follow, Andrew. I appreciate it. And so yes, she had super smell in like a few Wonder Woman issues. She's just had a lot of abilities that I don't really want to like discuss because like you've only really seen them in one comic, and when you see them, like, it's not real. It's not like the official. But the flight, super strength, combat abilities, her magical weapons. I'm adding some of you as regulars, that way you don't get... Sorry about that, y'all. I really should look at those settings. I just have like the basic settings. As far as who I would think who Diana's best friend on Overwatch would be, obviously Freya Amari. Duh. Are you kidding? They're both their turn-ons are justice. Like, obviously they would be best friends. And Zarya. Like, are you kidding me? Zarya would be like, let's train together, and they would just lift so many weights. It would be so sexy. But yeah, those Farah and Zarya would be her best friends for sure. Her, as far as post-crisis things, her lasso really gets kind of an overhaul. Yes, a workout party. Absolutely. Also, Farah should have a freaking Wonder Woman skin. Why doesn't she have, like, some kind of justice skin? Because she deserves it. She's queen of justice. But anyway. She... her lasso before Crisis, it was formed by Aphrodite's girdle, and anyone bound to it would submit to Wonder Woman's will. It has a whole... It was based off Marston's research into kinks and BDSM and all of that. So that's the history there. But it really kind of moved away from that and became overhauled to the point where it was just it's overpowered and just does crazy things. I really like what they did in the movie and just made it... Anyone bound by it has to tell the truth. And it really hurts if you don't tell the truth. But in the comics, the lasso can stretch an infinite amount of length, is linked to Wonder Woman mentally. At one point, the lasso is really kind of just a lasso, or a lariat if you're Greg Rucka, you know, you want to be official. And the real truth teller is Diana, and she just kind of hones her powers through the lasso. But anyway, the lasso truth is kind of, post-Crisis. It was forged by Hephaestus, empowered by the fires of Hestia. Anyone bound by the lasso must tell the truth. Later on, she's able to control the will of people, much like the original version. And if you break the lasso, the fabric of reality would cease to exist, according to one JLA story. Diana doesn't believe what the lasso tells her. Yeah, it's... Ruka calls it a whip. And I'm like, okay, maybe that's what Marston wanted, but it's not a whip. It's not a whip, but Ruka's wrong. I will fight him on that. But yeah, so one time Diana didn't believe her lasso, the lasso broke, and everyone started to like disappear. Batman started to disappear because everyone thought he was an urban legend and he like ceased to exist. Superman lost all his strength because no one... It was a mess. Basically, believe the lasso. The lasso is telling the truth. Even if you don't... You know, sometimes the truth hurts. That's basically the summary of that story. Comic book writers can't make up their minds. They need people like me to dissect everything to create a concise story. But I think recently they've really kind of... Especially with Ruka stuff, it makes sense. Greg Rucka's writing, it's god tier, great Wonder Woman stuff. Can't recommend him enough, even if sometimes he's wrong about calling the lasso a whip. So, anyway. Let's see. So those are our powers. There's a lot going on. And I lost... Where was I? Okay, there we go. I lost track. I got too distracted with different things. But now we can move on to all her, like, her cast of characters. And I'll go over... Most of these are gonna be Golden Age characters that you don't really see. And then I'll talk about, like, a few... Yeah, I know I need to focus. I'll talk about a few kind of current characters you see a lot, including, like, Cheetah and Cersei, because those are kind of the common ones that you feel that are associated with Wonder Woman. First off, you gotta start with Steve Trevor, as much as I regret it. He's Wonder Woman's original love interest. He's kind of the catalyst that gets her to leave the island. When his plane crashes on Themyscira, you know, it sets off this chain of events that eventually pushes Diana to leave the island and become the hero of mankind. He is a military... In the Golden Age, he was a Air Force pilot. Later on in the comics, he becomes a Argus agent, which is like this kind of Black Ops organization under Amanda Waller. Currently, he works under Commander Etta Candy. Remember that? As like a Black Ops kind of special forces operative. They kind of deal with like the more weird cases that Wonder Woman would be involved in, like secret cults and stuff like that, and they move in and kind of help. He's basically her connection to the American aspect of diplomacy in the world that I feel like Wonder Woman should be detached from. But, you know, that's just a personal opinion, and I have a lot of opinions on Steve Trevor that I feel like I don't need to discuss right now because, you know, don't want to. I'll get to him at one point, trust me. Gonna roast his ass one day. My favorite character, well, there's a lot of favorite characters that I have, but one of the best characters and most underrated character, in my opinion, is Etta Candy, Wonder Woman's right-hand woman, who very much faded from popularity in the comics, and yeah, Steve Trevor, 4-hour opinion session, like that's what it's gonna be. But yeah, Etta Candy, honestly, one of the best characters in the Golden Age comics. Like, she's this college sorority girl who decides to get all of her college sorority to fight alongside Wonder Woman. Like, how cool is that? She's like, okay, girls, we're gonna go save Wonder Woman today. And they all get in a plane, fly across the world, and save Wonder Woman from the Nazis. Like, that's literally what they did. I don't understand why she faded from popularity. I think it's because she was heavier set. And they just didn't want to put a heavier woman in the comics later on, and they just wanted to focus on the romance between her and Steve, you know, between Diana and Steve Trevor, and I think they really missed an opportunity. If it wasn't for Ruka totally redoing. Okay, Jumpa is pretty cool, but let's be real, Etta Candy's cooler. She saves Wonder Woman's ass multiple times in the Golden Age comics. Marston based her and the Holiday Girls, which was her sorority, after the sorority girls that were part of the feminist movements on college campuses. In the New 52, she was rebooted as Steve's secretary, and she was rebooted as a black woman, which I think it fits better. I think it's a good fit. And then in the Rebirths comics, we kind of get the, you know, she was at one point, like, she gets involved in the military and becomes like a commander. And then in the Rebirth comics, they really kind of hone in on that and make her into a commanding officer and Steve's superior. And they make her canonically a lesbian who is in love with Barbara Ann Minerva, aka Cheetah. The most tragic love story of last year. I'm heartbroken, and I still haven't gotten, like, they still haven't had a resolution yet. Like, come on. Like, it's not fair. You give me this gay character, and then you make her girlfriend forced to be evil, and they can't be together. I hate it. Anyway, I get, you know, it's just not fair because you don't see a lot of gay characters, and why do they always have to have freaking tragic love stories? But anyway, Etta Candy's the best. I think she's a lot of fun. She's always upbeat, and it's funny because she doesn't have any powers. She just shows up and, like, punches the bad guy, and that's it. And that's what she does. So definitely a good sidekick, I think, and people don't use her in that sense. And she challenges Diana because she's like, I've grown up in this world. You know, I'm a woman too, and I know, you know, sometimes you're an idiot, Diana. Like, you can't change everything through love sometimes. So I do like the way her character kind of, in those instances when she is used as this foil. Moving on, we have, next time I will bring water because my mouth is so dry right now. But next, the next person. Oh, yeah, Joss Whedon is a fucking dickbag for his fucking Wonder Woman script. It is the worst thing to ever happen to Wonder Woman ever, and he still thinks it's a good idea. Go away, Joss. No one needs you anymore. Anyway, Hippolyta, Diana's mom. Queen lesbian. Just kidding, not queen lesbian. Queen of the Amazons. Diana's mom, she either sends her daughters off with her blessing or tries to shield her from the world of men. You know, it's like the classic, like, you can't leave home, you're going to get hurt out there kind of thing. she and her, her sisters, the Amazons, are enslaved by Heracles, and at least the establishment of Themyscira. She's kind of the eternal queen because she lives forever. At one point, she acts as Wonder Woman on Diana's behalf and is a member of the Justice Society, depending on which storyline or which timeline you're reading from. But yeah, so she is really cool. She's the best mom ever. And she worries about Diana a lot, and it's like sometimes like she sends off Diana, and then she can't help Diana because there's always some rule that Diana can never return to Themyscira, and I'm just like, are you kidding? And then like eventually that gets retconned, and Diana comes back home at some point, and there's chaos on Themyscira because there's always chaos on Themyscira. Moving on to her villains, which I think don't get talked about a lot because we hear about Steve and Etta and Hippolyta and Philippus and the Amazons, and they're very important, but also, her villains haven't been used to like the most of their potential, I believe. Ares, Mars, originally he was Mars, as in like the Roman version of Ares, was the physical ruler of Mars, which was a slave planet. Yes, a slave planet. I know that sounds terrible. It's just overall a bad idea. I wish there was like some kind of think tank that was like, maybe we shouldn't do this, man. Doesn't sound right. But yeah, he wants to create chaos, wants to start war. On Mars, he wants to enslave women. It's bad. Later on, he's the god of war, Ares. He just wants to start war and chaos and everything. Bad. But his cronies from the Golden Age are Duke of Deception, Earl of Greed, and Lord Conquest. The Duke of Deception plays an important part in the Legend of Wonder Woman, which is a very nice kind of Golden Age retelling of Wonder Woman, and I think it's a good place to start for a lot of people. One of my favorite villains, though, is Dr. Poison, Princess Maru. Is a Japanese scientist that disguises herself as a doctor and does battle with Wonder Woman. She creates these different poisons. She's changed a lot over time. Dr. Poison is a gender neutral character. So, in the movies, it's Maru. She's called Dr. Maru, or Dr. Poison as her field name is called. But I like that over time, Dr. Poison has become this gender-neutral character, and you can call them, they're not a princess. They're like a scientist, an evil scientist. Not nearly as prominent as they were in the Golden Age, but their original weapon of choice was cyanide, and not really a fun fact, but a little fact. It's speculated that Marston tried to kill himself kind of during his college years using cyanide, and he kind of used Dr. Poison and cyanide as like a physical representation of like that battle he did in his real life. The family of course denies that this ever happened, but there's a lot of letters and stuff pointing to that. But I really like Dr. Poison, and I really would like to see Maru return and be that big villain, not just kind of a zany Russian scientist like they have been in the past. And certainly I would like to see them continue to be gender neutral. The worst villain ever. I'll say it again. The worst villain ever. Dr. Psycho. I hate the guy. I hate everything about him. I don't care if he ever comes back. I don't want him back. This character was partly inspired by Marston's philosophy and advisor in Harvard, I think it was, Dr. Hugo Munstenberg. This guy, this professor, hated the feminist and suffrage movement, was overall just a terrible dude, and that inspired Dr. Psycho, who also hated women and sought to torture them psychologically, and that's why he's the worst. He was originally just kind of a pawn of the Duke of Deception and all of that. Gotta fix that. So, okay, but anyway, at one point he psychologically tortures one of Diana's friends to insanity, and it leads her to become the Silver Swan. And that was just overall just a bad take on where to go with that character. Sorry, it's hurting my... Okay, there we go. I'm good. But yeah, that's kind of why I don't really like him. There's a lot of bad sexual assaults and psychological assault baggage associated with this character that just makes him overall not good to use. But I feel like people bring him up a lot because he was like one of those early villains and used often in some of these big story arcs. I don't know if there's a different way to write him other than this extremely misogynistic and abusive person that he is. But even, I don't know if I'd really enjoy him in any other, unless they kind of fix some of the problematic stuff. He leaves a bad taste in my mouth, like just the idea of his character. But you know, moving on to some of the cooler female villains, Baroness Paula von Gunter. She's a villainous and Nazi spy. You don't really see her anymore, and I think it's because she was, in fact, a Nazi. She's tasked with training slave girls into spies. Again, I trust Gail Simone to do that. Yeah. I would trust, of all the people to potentially rewrite this character, it would have to be Gail Simone. I don't think a guy would have, like, the tact to rewrite Dr. Psycho. Paula, you know, again, slavery plays a big role in these early comics, but not like the kind of slavery that's like the real slavery, but like the sexual kind of slavery. That's just really bad. It's just one of those things you just shake your head and like, why are early comics like this? Why? Basically she's tasked with like stealing secrets, fighting Wonder Woman. A particular fight nearly kills her, and she agrees to undergo reconditioning and becomes one of Diana's closest allies in the Golden Age comics. I mean, she literally becomes like Diana's best friend through like this Amazonian reconditioning program. And again, it's like that whole like, okay, like I know Marston, you did a lot of research on like psychology and all that, but it doesn't come across that well, just let you know. But yeah, she's pretty, like, I really liked her story arc though in the Golden Age comics, because she starts out as this villain. She has a brush with death, realizes she needs to care for her daughter, and decides like, hey, I'm gonna hang up the villain cape and I will undergo this. And she ends up becoming, you know, a good friend of Diana. Cheetah definitely will have her own episode. Like, there's no way around it. I've grown to love this character. I thought she was just lame. I'm like, why does everyone pick Cheetah as their favorite Wonder Woman hero? You guys don't know who Wonder Woman heroes are? Like, no. Cheetah's all that. Like, Cheetah is great. Especially Greg Rucka's version of Cheetah, which I think takes some of the more problematic issues in the 80s, refines it, and makes it even better. In the Golden Age comics, she was a schizophrenic socialite, a rich heiress that was embarrassed by Wonder Woman and decides to turn to crime, and steal things and battle Wonder Woman. She unfortunately suffered from split personality, which is like the split personality was her versus like Cheetah. And that kind of theme of like split personalities or split kind of natures still kind of plays a role in the Cheetah that it exists today. Priscilla Rich was the first one to wear the Cheetah suit. And then, so she's kind of like the first cheetah. I wouldn't say she's like Catwoman, except that she's a thief. That's about kind of the only thing similar. Later on in the 80s, Cheetah is rebooted. Barbara Ann Minerva becomes the Cheetah. Barbara Ann is a brilliant archaeologist who is so obsessed with like mythology and the divine. She travels into Africa again. That's a little bit problematic. It comes in contact with a dangerous cult where they undergo a ritual to take on the power of the cheetah. The only problem is, and this is where the problematic aspects of it come into play, is you have to be a virgin to be the cheetah. Yeah, that's right. You have to be like classic Indiana Jones style Temple of Doom kind of, we have to sacrifice a virgin heart kind of thing. That she's not, Barbara Ann was not a virgin, and as a result, she's psychologically tortured every day by the god Kartaga. I'm saying that wrong, but this extremely misogynistic, awful deity. As the cheetah, she hungers for human flesh and has supernatural abilities, and this hunger and this incessant need to kill and consume is kind of supposed to symbolize like punishment for her own incessant greed, but it really just comes across as like victim blaming. And again, this is in the 80s, the George Perez comics. But basically this whole dual nature is that she can't fight back the cheetah's urges to kill, to attack, to consume human flesh. And Diana's in constant, I know, oh, George Perez, you did so much good and you did so much wrong. And Diana is constantly trying to save her, and that's the appeal of like the Cheetah Wonder Woman dynamic, is that Diana doesn't want to kill Cheetah or like fight Cheetah. She wants to save Cheetah, and in the Ruka rendition of Cheetah, she wants to save like her best and closest friend, like her very first friend in man's world. Arguably, like, you can consider Steve Diana's first friend, but Steve was more Diana's first like love interest. But like Barbara Ann came into Diana's life as like the first person she could actually speak to who understood her and got like the pantheon and the gods, because that's what she was studying, and because she was so hungry for like knowledge and Themyscira, it leads her to the, this is in the Rebirth comics, to this cult and to Cheetah. And Diana's always trying to Diana still wants to save her, even if Cheetah doesn't want to be saved, or Barbara doesn't want to be saved. And to add a cherry on top, she falls in love with Ed Candy, and they have this relationship, and like they can never be together because of the cheetah. And it's just like, it's so sad, but it's like a great, very human and feminine moment simultaneously that I feel like you don't see in a lot of comics, and I feel like no one's ever gonna touch on it again because it's Greg Rucka and everyone wants to do their own thing. But it's like, I want to know more. I just want Cheetah and Diana. That's all I want to focus on. And Etta and all that. So those, the final kind of villain that I feel gets brought up a lot is Circe. This is the Circe from the Greek mythology, kind of tweaked a little bit. She hates the Amazons, hates them. They wronged her one time. She is the chaotic, evil lesbian that everyone believes. Yeah, she's just a chaotic, evil lesbian. She got a hold of Wonder Woman's powers once, and she just killed a bunch of men in a bar because they were misogynistic. That's the kind of person she is. Like, she hates men, but she also hates the Amazons. And she's like a trickster and a magician, and there's whole lot of magic. And she has some good stories, some fun stories. But oftentimes she's kind of like a one-off villain. Actually, as far as saving Cheetah goes, Diana does save Cheetah. But through like she does help Cheetah like defeat the curse at one point, but then there's like this tragic moment where like Barbara Ann has to decide between saving Etta and Steve or saving herself, and so she chooses to become Cheetah again to save everyone else. And then at that point she can't go back. Like there's instances where she does go back and forth. So there's that push and pull, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of situation. So Diana has almost gotten there and has in a way saved her, but ultimately Barbara Ann is, you know, not really a victim of her own choices, but like, you know, she's human, so she can't deny human nature, can't deny her choices that always have consequences, and it's a very big contentious point for Diana as a character because she comes from paradise. She doesn't realize what human nature is. And I feel like I'd describe it more if I had a little more time. It's, you know, Diana can't change human nature. She can't always fight. She can sometimes succeed in changing people's hearts, but she can't always do that. And that's kind of where the tragedy with Cheetah is that she can't always overcome that. I know, it's very sad. Hello, Real Joker. Thank you for joining. We're kind of close to wrapping up here. There's a few more characters I want to discuss, and also a few places to begin. But I really encourage people to kind of explore on their own more than anything. So I went over Cersei. The Pantheon is pretty self-explanatory. You know, Ares, Aphrodite, Athena, Hestia, Zeus, Hera, Hermes. All those guys, they show up from time to time. Some play bigger roles than others. Athena usually plays a big role because she's always playing like this. I think of Athena this way, like everyone's playing chess, but she's playing 3D chess. And she's like in this long game to kind of see if she can use Diana in a certain way to get her own political goal. And it's like, Diana knows that she's being used, but Athena's like, you're not going to do anything about it because I'm a god, you know? And so there's never any consequences for the Pantheon that I think plays a big role into Wonder Woman's story. The Real Joker, thank you for the follow. I do appreciate it. You know, like the Pantheon is selfish and they're rude and they're, you know, they don't really care about human life except for if you're like Hestia and like, you know, the Titan Gaia who cares about like people and the earth. They just want to act on their own natures and their own like kind of wants and needs. And Diana is often kind of just used by them for their own selfish gains, and she kind of has to go along with it sometimes. She's like, these are my gods, and even though I can go toe to toe with a lot of them, I still gotta kind of essentially heed their laws and their rules. Or you can be like Patty Jenkins and just kill off the Pantheon and never have to worry about the Pantheon ever again, because sometimes they get overused and you don't really need to use them. The Venom movie, it's not something I'm super interested in. I've kind of moved away from a lot of the spider stuff, but I hope the trailer was kind of weird, so I hope the movie ends up being successful. That's kind of how I am. I'll check it out if people are loving it. If not, I'll just kind of wait around. That's kind of how I felt about Infinity War. I'm just kind of waiting for that to come out on DVD. Please don't flame me for that. Okay, let's see. Last few couple characters, of course, the Amazons. You have General Philippus, who's Hippolyta's general and wife. Unofficially, they haven't gotten married yet. They will one day, I believe. They will. And I'll write letters to DC if I have to make it happen. Mala plays more of a role in the Golden Age comics. She's kind of Diana's rival and ends up becoming one of Diana's friends. but almost like a childhood rival. They like fight constantly, and they're like, Mala's the strongest Amazon. I was like, no, Diana's the strongest Amazon. Artemis, not the goddess Artemis the Amazon, created kind of in the 80s 90s era. She was kind of like this edgier Wonder Woman, and she at one point becomes Wonder Woman because Wonder Woman has to give up being Wonder Woman. It's a confusing. I still actually have to like completely read that arc where Wonder Woman becomes a biker, or she wears like a biker outfit and becomes like an edgy Wonder Woman, while Artemis is it's confusing. I understand, and I'm not going to go into detail about that stuff because it's very much confusing. Yeah, I'm starting a petition, let Hippolyta and Philippus marry, and I need 100,000 signatures so we can send it off to DC and tell them, screw you, let them get married. But now that we've kind of digested as much as possible Wonder Woman, who Wonder Woman is, all of that, where to begin? I am of the mind that you have to kind of explore for yourself the stories that you like, but I understand that's very daunting. I started with The Hikatea by Greg Rucka. It's a one-off story of Wonder Woman fighting Batman. It's very much contained in this one universe, and it's a good place to start. I recommend The Legend of Wonder Woman by Renee DeLiz and Ray Dillon. It's a retelling of the Golden Age with more of like a modern mind, and kind of eliminates a lot of the problematic stuff that were in the original comics. Very much contained, very much accessible to all ages, which is a double bonus. If you're looking for good kind of Wonder Woman origins, read Wonder Woman Year One and Rebirth Wonder Woman by Greg Rucka. It's the most recent kind of reboot stuff, and really, Greg Rucka has written the character twice already, like back in the early 2000s and last year, or last 2 years. He's not writing anymore, but his stuff is just god tier. Seriously, one of my favorite writers of all time. I can't recommend it, like, his stuff enough. Not just like Wonder Woman, but all of his stuff. If I ever meet him in real life, I will have so much stuff for him to sign. He writes very, very engaging stories, and he takes a lot from the Greek mythology and turns it into really compelling stories that I love as someone who loves Greek mythology. There is the original Sensation comics, which you can find on Comixology online, because, you know, of course, you're no way you're gonna find like actual printed stuff of this. That's like the original Marston and H.G. Peter run. There's a lot of cool stories. The Wonder Woman fights a milk corporation. Wonder Woman fights for equal rights, equal pay for women. Stuff like that I think, you know, you don't see a lot of, like, Wonder Woman fights with the unions against evil corporation. Like, you don't see that stuff today. A little caveat is, of course, there's a heavy dose of racism, and it's the depiction of Japanese people. That's, you know, I give that as a big warning, because people are like, you recommended this to me, but it's awful. And it's like, yeah, it's old comics, and that is there, and you have to kind of keep that in mind when you read this. It doesn't excuse that, but it is something to expect. And then, of course, there's the new Sensation comics featuring Wonder Woman. It's an anthology of stories. You don't have to necessarily know her origin. It's just little one-off stories by some very good writers. And there's like 3-4 volumes of just all ages stories, more intense stories, fun stories, sad stories, interesting art. And it's just really kind of good if you don't really want to dive into the lore, into the meat of Wonder Woman, but still want to like read her stories. I think that's a good way. And depending on if people want more, I can go over like a more detailed outline of where to begin, where in what era these are the stories you can read. That will definitely require me twice as much as I'll need to read twice as much as I've already read, but I'm willing to do it because I love the character. So finally, before I end everything, I wanted to go over my sources. I don't just talk the talk. I do talk a lot, but I do reference I do look through the comics. I look through different, encyclopedias that I've collected over the years, and different art books and stuff to find different tidbits of information. I of course look online. Like, I'm not afraid to admit it, Wikipedia is a great source to kind of find basic knowledge, and then from there move on. Okay, I had all my books down here. Particularly for this episode, I used Secret History of Wonder Woman by Jill Lepore. It is a controversial book, but it discusses Marston's life, from his birth to his creation of Wonder Woman and kind of what happened afterwards. Goes over the family, some of the more scandalous stuff that the family does not approve of. So if you decide to read it, you may not want to read it because it's not approved by the family, but that's just something to keep in mind. You got to kind of keep an open mind about what you read. I have this old Wonder Woman encyclopedia that I found at a Comic-Con once. It's all Golden Age information. There's a new encyclopedia that Phil Jimenez helped write. It'll probably have more recent Wonder Woman information, more of like the stuff from the 80s. I mean, this is all like, it's legitimately just Golden Age and Silver Age stuff. I do know quite a bit about mythology, and as far as comics, I know a lot more about Wonder Woman comics more than anything. I know a lot about comics, but generally as far as in-depth information, I know about Wonder Woman. That's the Wonder Woman and Greek mythology are where I choose to focus, because if I focus in too many areas, you don't learn a lot. My second favorite kind of history book is The Golden Thread. That is by Philip Sandifer. There's a bunch of Wonder Woman history books out there that go over like the history, like the actual like eras of Wonder Woman in each comic. But I've found his opinions on the comic books to kind of align with my own, and generally more enjoyable. And he has a very good breakdown of the mod era of comics, which I think is very misunderstood. So you can pretty much find any writer who's done like a Wonder Woman history book, and it's pretty much the same information, and it's good to go. I pretty much have all of them. I haven't read all of them, that's the thing. So if I need to, though, I will. And finally, I have this giant art book that I use for references to different parts of history, different pages. It has some of her more iconic stuff, and it goes over some of the early comics and has a foreword by George Perez. And overall, it's just a kind of cool book to look at, because you don't get to see like a comic this size and in that HD quality, especially like old comics. It looks really, like, when you see an old comic this big size, it looks cool. Like, I mean, look at that. It looks like something you put in a frame. Oh, that's just, I got a Force Awakens poster that I really liked, so I put it up there. I would say I know a lot more. I don't know as much about Star Wars lore, but I've watched all the movies. I played Knights of the Old Republic, so that's kind of where my knowledge is. But those are kind of my references. As I continue more, depending on how people receive it, I'll definitely always do more research and more reading, and keep getting that information to you guys, because I really do like that information. But yeah, that pretty much concludes. I did not expect to talk for this long, and I thought I was gonna do this in an hour, and I was talking fast, so I'm not surprised that it took this long, but also I'm extremely embarrassed that I spent this much time on just an origin story. Probably as stuff gets more focused, there'll be a lot shorter episodes. But before we end the episode, is there any other final questions? Is there? I'll pose the question now since I have a few people, and I'll pose it on Twitter as well. What is kind of the next episode you would like to see in a month's time from now? Because I feel like I do need time to really get my information together for this kind of stuff. Is there a particular order you'd like, or something you'd like to see in the next episode? And I'll kind of keep that in mind as we move forward. Grabbing paper just in case you guys say something cool. But yeah, let me hear your thoughts, guys. Was I talking too fast? Just tell it to me straight, Smalls. Wonder Woman's role in the Justice League. That would be an interesting one. That pin doesn't work. I feel like that's a good next episode. Okay. You need to marinate the information. I understand. It's a lot of information. And once I read through this, I didn't mean to hit that. Once I read through my script again, I'll post it so you guys have it. So you can marinate with like words instead of just me talking. Yeah, I think we're at a good stopping point. I appreciate everyone who joined. Mars, Andrew, Bombi, Real Joker, and everyone who was here earlier. I definitely appreciate the company. I need water next time, yes. I just talked a lot, so I definitely need water. Wonder Woman and her gal pals. I think that'll be all of Wonder Woman's female love interest over the years. Got it. Shaking so much. Okay. I think that'll be a good episode, and I'll post it on Twitter to see what other people would like to see. Kind of like 4 choices I think will be good, and then from there we can move on. But the next episode will be the last Thursday of June. I'm also going to E3, so I'll definitely have to make sure I don't wait till last minute to get information together. June 28th. Yes, June 28th is when the next episode will be. It'll be on a Thursday at 8 p.m. In the meantime, feel free to reach out to me via Twitter. You can find my Twitter information down in the panels below, but it's Llama Amelia. And you can ask me Wonder Woman questions there. And also, if you haven't already, please follow, or, even leave a subscribe if you have that free Amazon Prime subscription. But no pressure, the follows definitely help. And I'll be streaming on Sunday. Maybe Overwatch, maybe God of War. I haven't decided yet, but it'll be variety streaming. And thank you. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it, and thank you for keeping me company. Oh, by the way, what? Wait, when did the Wonder Woman movie come out? The movie didn't come out to June. Yeah, the movie came out June 2nd. So I guess it's like within the week. Well, no. Technically this Thursday. Well, wait. June 2nd, 2017. Okay, so yesterday would have been like the 1st, which was a Thursday, which would have been when everyone was going to their midnight premieres. But anyway, it's within the same week, so that's auspicious and cool at the same time. I did not know that. That's cool. All right, guys. You were close. You were very close. But thank you guys for joining me, and I will see you in the next Themysciran Agenda, and I will see you on some variety stream later. So thanks, guys.